welcome to the Longmont Museum Stewart Auditorium. Thank you for being here this evening. It's great to see so many folks interested in this subject. I'm Holly Milne. I'm a communications and marketing manager at the city, and I'll be the MC tonight. First, I'd like to take a quick moment to remind everyone to silence your cell phones, please. So just double check that you're on silent. And then, as we begin, I'd like to recognize one of our city council members who is here with us tonight, Councilmember Joan Peck. Joan, thank you for being here. All right, so at the beginning of the year, several planners and engineers came to my team with an idea. Create a community event to highlight all of the work underway to build a sustainable transportation system in Longmont. From that idea, we created Linking Longmont. We put this event together for you all, to get you informed, engaged, and excited. So to kick things off, we're going to show a short clip from a TV show. It presents the transportation challenge in America and identifies what is required to solve it. Be ready, this show is a little quirky, so pull up your sense of humor and enjoy.
That's awful.
Yeah, it is. Transportation is a fundamental human need. So the fact that we built our entire country so that everyone in it has to buy and maintain one of these things just to move around their own community, that's a genuine tragedy. They're monstrously expensive. You have to deal with a psychologically manipulative charlatan just to buy one, and we are so bad at driving them that there's an entirely different predatory industry based around the fact that we constantly crash these things and die.
You're talking about the insurance industry, right?
Yes, very good, Trunks. What really kills me about all of this is the only reason we're stuck with this cluster fudge is because we were tricked into building roads instead of subways 100 years ago. The dominance of the car is a massive cultural mistake. But I was gonna tell you how we can fix everything. Rose! Hey, Mom. You come pick me up? It happened again.
Get in. Truck's curious.
I'll call you back.
What is that?
That truck is a subway station.
In Los Angeles? No way.
Yep, and there are more on the way. Hi guys, I'm Selena Reynolds. I'm in charge of the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
This is so weird. We've been up like all night.
People say nobody walks in LA, but nothing could be further from the truth. We have one of the busiest rail lines in the country, one of the busiest bus lines in the country, and more people walking and biking every day. We figured out that we have to plan for people and not just cars.
Is this a mirage?
No, it's a public plaza. This used to be a road, but the community leaders got together and decided that they wanted a place to gather and created a true public space. It turns out when you make a great place to walk, it's really good for local businesses.
Yo, that's counterintuitive as hell. But I like it.
So sometimes, even though it's controversial, we have to take space for streets and give it to people so that everybody has a great choice for how they get around.
Look, no city has been shaped by the car more than LA, so if they can make positive changes here, we can make them anywhere in America.
Okay, but cars are still just fun to drive.
I know they are, Zach, and they're a great option for certain kinds of travel, but maybe we should be thinking about cars more like rollerblades. They're a lot of fun when you're the only person using them, but it would really suck if that was the only way people could get to work.
So you're saying I can keep my car, but I should use public transportation and support walkability initiatives.
Exactly.
Cool. Can I go?
Sure you can, buddy. Put her there, dude. Put her there, Salita.
I gotta get back to work. Bye, Adam.
Put her there, Adam.
All right, so with that grounding from Adam, let's learn about what Longmont is doing. Our first speaker tonight is Ben Ortiz. Ben is a recently appointed transportation planner at the city of Longmont, where he's worked for over 17 years in several different capacities. Ben works closely with Bill Grunwald, the city's transportation planning manager, who is also here tonight. Bill. And if you're looking closely at your program, you can see that Phil is already enjoying delegating to Ben. So Ben holds a Master's of Urban and Regional Planning from the University of California, Los Angeles. As part of his new role, Ben facilitates the Longmont Bicycle Issues Committee. This group meets on the fourth Monday of each month and extends an open invitation for anyone interested in participating. Please welcome Ben.
Thank you, Holly. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see there's so much interest in active transportation planning and active transportation modes. So about 20 years ago, when I first moved to Colorado, I read a planning article. And in the planning article, it stated that there was virtually no way you could increase bicycle ridership in the city of New York. That Jeanette Sadiq Khan, she was a former transportation commissioner under Mayor Michael Bloomberg. I think he'd disagree. I think she would disagree. She made huge strides in improving the bicycle riding environment. She improved surface transportation in the form of bus rapid transit service, as well as transportation and pedestrian environment. And she did all this while improving the transportation system for automobiles. In a nutshell, if she could do that in New York City, it could certainly be done anywhere. And like we saw in Los Angeles, and I was formerly from Los Angeles, it was not a very bike-friendly place, but they were really making some pretty significant strides in providing active transportation modes. So here in Longmont, I think the Envision Longmont plan will help us get closer to that goal. So the Envision Longmont Multimodal and Comprehensive Plan is the long-range overarching plan for how the city will grow and change over the next 20 years. The Envision Longmont's multimodal plan, it includes an active transportation component comprised of a transit plan, a pedestrian plan, and a bicycle facilities plan. And all transportation plans adopted by the city are intended to implement the Envision Longmont multimodal plan. So other plans not part of the Envision Longmont plan, but related to active transportation include the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan and the First and Main Station Transit Revitalization Plan and the Enhanced Multi-Use Corridor Plan. So while transit projects won't be featured at any of the tables tonight, I thought I'd briefly mention a few you can expect to see in the future, since transit is a key feature of the Envision Longmont Multimodal Transportation Plan. In the short term, we can expect to see the construction of the State Highway 119 Bus Rapid Transit Project beginning in 2023. There will also be extensions of the bus service to the southeast part of the town, resulting in transit service to the Walmart on East Ken Pratt Boulevard, and that should happen sometime in 2020. Some mid-range projects include the US 287 Bus Rapid Transit Service. The northernmost stop for this service will be just north of the Walmart near Highway 287 and 66. Another mid-range project includes the Weld County Transit Options, where we'll explore the viability of a private or a state carrier that will operate transit service across RTD lines from the Longmont East into the Tri-Town area. In the long term, there's the Northwest Rail, which is the commuter rail between Longmont and Boulder as part of the Fast Tracks plan. And then also we're looking at the Northern Colorado Rail. And we won't expect to see that anytime soon, as the expected timeline is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 years. So pedestrian projects include missing sidewalk segments intended to fill gaps quickly as funding becomes available or during the development process for new developments. The city's primary focus for pedestrian improvements includes activity centers like schools, transit stations, and mixed-use corridors. Some specific improvements to activity centers include high-quality pedestrian facilities like sidewalks and crossing treatments at intersections. The City of Longmont's Land Development Code requires pedestrian improvements in new private developments, as well as connections to existing public facilities. If there are no existing public facilities, private developers are typically required to provide those as amenities as well. In the City of Longmont's Capital Improvement Program, which is the 5-year planning document approved yearly by City Council, it includes public funding allocations for capital projects like pedestrian improvements that reflect the priorities listed on this screen. So some of the bicycle improvements that you'll see tonight include shared multi-use trails, on-street bike lanes, side paths, which are 8-foot concrete facilities adjacent to streets, and shared lanes and shoulders. You'll also have the opportunity to look at enhanced multi-use corridor projects. The enhanced multi-use corridor plan was accepted by the Longmont City Council in March 2018 and identifies several corridors for upgrades to make them more friendly for bicyclists as well as pedestrians. Improvements include separated and protected bike lanes, multi-use trails within the right-of-way, and bicycle boulevards and cycle tracks. Bicycle improvements also include other accommodations for active modes, including intersection and crossing improvements along with underpasses and bridges. So the potential bicycle riding population is broken down in this chart. Approximately 1/3 of all people capable of riding bicycles fall into the no way, no how group. So no matter how good, no matter how safe, no matter how well connected the bicycle facility network is, these folks, they're simply not getting on a bike, period. A small majority, comprised of about 55%, are interested in riding, but are unlikely to ride because they don't feel safe. This group is what we call an interested but concerned, and they're our primary target group. So providing a safe, connected bicycle facilities system, there's a lot of potential to get this small majority to at least give bicycle riding a try. The last 15% is comprised of somewhat confident as well as experienced and confident riders, and this group is less deterred by the state of the bicycle environment and are more likely to ride just about anywhere. And so that does conclude my presentation. Again, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I encourage you to visit the planning table outside after the presentations are over. If you are interested in participating in the Bicycle Issues Committee, as Holly noted, we meet the 4th Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m. at the Development Services Center across the street from the library. And if you're interested, please come and introduce yourself, and we'll see you outside. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce our neighbor to the north, Tessa Grieger from the City of Fort Collins. Tessa manages the FC Bikes program for Fort Collins, which is a comprehensive bike program focused on making bicycling safer and more comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. Tessa holds a Master's of Urban Planning and Design from the University of Washington. She has helped bring a variety of new initiatives, plans, and projects to Fort Collins, which she is here to tell us about today. So please welcome Tessa.
Well, thank you, everyone. This is fantastic. fantastic turnout. As one of those strong and fearless riders, I was really pleased to be able to ride my bike down here tonight from Fort Collins. So thank you for that opportunity. Just kidding, that didn't happen. So anyway, I do very much appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to share a little bit about what Fort Collins is doing to develop a bicycle-friendly community. So before I jump in, I want to provide a little bit of an introduction to the department that I work in back in the city of Fort Collins. So I work for the department called FC Moves. Unfortunately, this is the only photo I have of our department, which may leave you wondering what happens up in Fort Collins, what we're all about. But we are a multimodal department that includes transportation planning, safe routes to school, and the FC Bikes program, which I oversee. The mission of FC Moves is to promote safe, sustainable, and convenient transportation options for people of all ages and abilities. The culture of bicycling in Fort Collins did not happen overnight. In fact, like in most communities around the United States, its origins date back to the late 1800s. But I'll quickly skip over the next 120 years to the 1960s and the 1970s, when planning and advocacy for bicycle infrastructure really started to occur in Fort Collins. I came across this article that was in the Colorado in 1963 that's highlighted here on this slide. Unfortunately, I didn't see it before we started developing our bicycle master plan because it would have made my job a lot easier. And I say that because the principles and the recommendations that are reflected in this article are pretty similar to what we're talking about today. So at the time in 1963, there was a citizens group that was lobbying the city to try to get routes that are separated from traffic, bicycle routes that are separated from traffic, trying to get safe routes throughout the city. They wanted to establish a route system on a 4-month trial basis, and if you've heard anything recently about pilot programs, trials, you know, we talk about that like it's a new thing, but apparently that was talked about back in the 60s as well. Painting bicycle lanes, and then my personal favorite, removing diagonal parking, which has not come to fruition, at least in Fort Collins, but removing diagonal parking on streets where they had dedicated bike routes. But again, I found this quite interesting looking at where we are today and thinking about a lot of those concepts still apply in what we're planning for around bicycling. The city manager's response to this proposal at the time, and I'll quote this because it was in the article, he said, "If we went out into the desert with the purpose of building a city where none stood before, it would be a difficult task to provide for such separation of traffic and building of special paths. Here in Fort Collins, with the city already built and expanding, the task is many times greater." And of course, that was a challenging task, but a lot of this was in fact done. So fast forward to 2013, Fort Collins receives a platinum level bicycle-friendly community designation. This is a designation that's given out by the League of American Bicyclists, which is a national organization. And this was really a reflection of many things that had developed over the previous 30 to 40 years, but largely the city's commitment early on to developing complete streets and building out a network of dedicated bike lanes and trails, as well as advocacy and political leadership that helped to establish a number of things, but one of those big things was a dedicated city bike program that we now oversee. And of course, the growing bike culture, which was supported by entities like Colorado State University and New Belgium Brewing. And as a result, Fort Collins has historically had relatively high bicycle ridership. So we hover somewhere around 7% of commuters that travel by bike, and that's stayed pretty consistent over the last 5 to 8 years. And this is good when we look across cities throughout the United States. But when we look beyond the United States, we see places like Amsterdam, where nearly 50% of their population is riding bikes. So clearly we have examples of how this can be done. And here we know that people do want that opportunity to ride more often. So here we are back in the United States. Last year, we had the opportunity to take our city manager, mayor, and traffic engineer to the Netherlands to learn about what they're doing to create this system, this bike culture, and to get to that 50% ridership number. Of course, there are many factors at play in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam. But one of those big factors relates to bicycle infrastructure. So historically, and Ben spoke about this a little bit as well, historically we've been designing our infrastructure around this person. This person will ride in just about any condition on any street. And this really only comprises a small percentage of our population. This is the strong and fearless, or the enthused and confident rider. And we're not so much planning for this guy, who's my nephew, Jordan, and his mom, my sister, who, again, as Ben mentioned, makes up a much larger percentage of our population, often called the interested but concerned. So with this framework in mind, we've set out to develop a new bicycle master plan in 2014. And this was really founded on this idea of designing for the interested but concerned rider, and doing that throughout the infrastructure recommendations as well as our programming recommendations. The first step to developing our bicycle network plan was conducting a bicycle comfort analysis to determine how comfortable our existing network was for that interested but concerned rider. The results showed that although there are miles of comfortable streets shown in blue there in the map, those are not the arterials. The arterials, despite having bike lanes on a majority of them, were shown as high stress in red. And those high stress arterials are creating a grid of barriers to people who would like the opportunity to ride a bike. And then a recent analysis we did showed that 92% of those arterials are considered high stress, again, appealing to a very small percentage of the population. And yet this is where we tend to see people ride. And in some cases that's because there may not be a better route, or they may not know that there's a better route. And again, or meanwhile, we see that, at least in Fort Collins, around 86% of our bike crashes involve an arterial. So enter the 2020 Low Stress Bicycle Network. So this is what we designed as a result of that information. And this system really seeks to leverage those existing low volume, low speed streets, those low stress streets that were shown in blue, to provide a system of comfortable routes that connects people to destinations throughout the community. Fundamental to the low stress network are those locations where those low stress streets intersect with arterials, or the higher stress streets. And so in those cases, we've identified within the plan 40 to 50 spot improvements, or intersection improvements, where we're proposing to provide safe and convenient ways for people to cross those higher volume, higher speed streets. And there are a number of ways that we're looking at doing that, a number of designs that we've implemented to date in order to do that. But if a person doesn't have a way, a signalized way, or a safe way to get across a street that carries 30 or 40,000 vehicles per day, they're very unlikely to make that trip by bike. In addition to the spot improvements, we're not ignoring the arterials. I've talked a lot about the arterials already, but the way that we're approaching those is strategically. We're looking at those as protected bike lane pilot project opportunities, and I'll talk about one example that was implemented last year as a way for us to really test out this new, at least a Fort Collins type of infrastructure, to understand how should these facilities be maintained, what is the best design, what are the best practices around that. Bicycle wayfinding is key to the low stress network, and providing information so people know where these low stress routes are and know how to find them, and then providing information so that they can travel along those corridors. In addition to signage, we've developed a comfort-based bicycle map which identifies where those